if she stabbed him in a fight and dialed 911 and my son died, we'd be having a different conversation today. But we didn't even have the opportunity to properly bury him because his body was so decomposed. This is what I wound up going to the morgue to see. This is what I had to go see. That's what I had to see, Judge. And it's so hurtful and so, I can't even describe it. That's something I'm going to have to live with for the rest of my life.
She called him Dad, looked George Sr. dead in his face, called him Dad, and said, "I would never do anything to hurt George." And the whole time she was saying it, June was already in that river. Already hogtied, already wrapped in a sheet, already decomposing, and this man, this father, drove past that same river 26 times looking for his son, not knowing. Make it make sense. Because I am really trying. Let that sit with you for a second, because this story is not just about a murder. It is about a man who made that same drive, Michigan to Cleveland, Cleveland to Michigan, 26 times over 7 months, crossing the same stretch of water every single time. And his son was right there, underneath him, the whole time. And nobody told him. That is the kind of pain that does not have a name. My name is not important. What is important is this story, and the man at the center of it, who deserved so much better than the way he left this world. This is the story of George Cox Jr. This is for June. George Cox Jr., everybody who loved him called him June, was 32 years old, born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio. He stood 5 feet 6, and by every account from the people who actually knew him, he was a man who showed up. Not a perfect man, and his own father said that out loud in that courtroom, but a present one, a real one. He had a daughter. Her name is Gianna, and at the time all of this happened, she was 8 years old, and June was particular about being in her life. That was not a small thing. That was who he was. His aunt, Chaplain Candace Amos, spoke about him at the sentencing. She talked about a holiday when June was still a little boy, how he spent Christmas Eve at her house with his mother and his siblings, how they played games and watched Christmas movies, and how early that Christmas morning, before the sun was even all the way up, he helped make pancakes from scratch for the very first time. She said she remembered the look in his young eyes when he realized he had made something good from nothing, that he had done that himself. She said after that, she called him the Pancake King, because he never wanted to use a box mix again. That is the kind of detail that tells you everything about a person. The pride in a little boy's eyes over a stack of pancakes. That was June. His father, George Cox Sr., lived in Farmington Hills, Michigan. The two of them stayed close in a way that made a lot of sense for their time apart. They shared their locations with each other. Both of them. Always. So if something happened, they knew where to look. They stayed in contact. They talked. That connection between a father and his son was active, real, and consistent, right up until the moment it went silent. Now, Dy'mond Vaden was also 32 years old. She and June were in a relationship. By her own words, it had its good moments and its bad ones. She said that herself in open court. She had her own place. June had his own apartment on Bosworth Avenue in Cleveland. And then there was Emmanuel McQueen Jr., 41 years old. According to what investigators pulled together during the case, Dy'mond was also in a relationship with him while she was still with June. So that is the picture going into this. A man in his apartment, a woman in his life, and another man in the background. Moving on. The last time George Sr. heard his son's voice was a regular kind of conversation. June called him about a family situation. He wanted to know if he was handling it the right way. They talked it through. George Sr. told him to call back later. He never called back. By October 19th, the family could not reach June at all. No calls, no texts, no location updates. George Sr. drove straight to the Bosworth Avenue apartment. What he found when he got there was not a man who had stepped out. It was an apartment that had been cleared out. Empty. Cleaned. And on the floor, there were marks. The kind of marks that come from someone trying to scrub something away. He contacted Cleveland police. Detective Kevin Callahan and his team responded and ran luminol through the unit. Girl. The luminol reacted on the walls, on the floors, on the doors. Blood. Everywhere, and every trace that came back was confirmed as George Cox Jr. But at that point, June was still missing. Police spoke to Dy'mond a few days after the apartment was discovered. She told them she had no knowledge of what had happened to George. And then she said something that should have been its own red flag. She told officers she had never even been inside that apartment. Not once. Investigators checked her place and found a pair of boots. She told them those boots were not even hers. Testing confirmed they belonged to George. So what exactly was the plan there? Because that is not a mistake. That is a choice. Then there was the recorded phone call. June's brother, Jamari, reached out to Dy'mond during the search. He recorded the conversation. It went about 11 or 12 minutes. According to the prosecutor, every single time Jamari pushed her on where his brother was, she got angry and denied knowing anything. 11 minutes of a brother begging for answers, and she gave him nothing. The whole time, George Sr. was making that drive. Back and forth. Michigan to Cleveland, Cleveland to Michigan. 26 times. Looking, hoping, crossing the Huron River every single trip, not knowing his son was in that water. Anyways, here is what those 7 months looked like for June's mother, Sonia Calloway. She talked to her son almost every single day. Every day. And then one day, nothing. No call, no answer. Just silence. And then 7 months of not knowing whether her child was alive somewhere or gone. Detective Callahan, a man with nearly 30 years in law enforcement and 15 of those working exclusively missing persons cases, said it plainly at the sentencing. With a homicide, as horrible as it is, the family knows from the start they can begin to grieve. With a missing persons case that ends in a homicide, there is an extra window of time. In this case, 7 months of pure not knowing. Holding out hope that maybe, somehow, the person is still alive somewhere. And then learning that they were not. That extra time is its own kind of punishment that the criminal justice system, in his words, often overlooks. Let me tell you something. When a seasoned detective who has worked hundreds of cases walks into a sentencing hearing and says this is the first time in 30 years he has ever felt the need to speak.
Some wires that might come with it, but that'll be all right.
All right.
Yes, that's fine.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Your Honor, I've been a police officer for nearly 30 years and have been strictly a missing persons detective for the last 15. I unfortunately have had other cases similar to the one that we're here on today. However, this is the very first time that I felt compelled to make a statement during this part of our justice system. I've been working on this case since the beginning of November of 2024 when the missing person report was initially made. Over that time, I've had the opportunity, although obviously at the worst of times, to get to know the family of George Cox Jr., particularly his father. With them, like so many other family members of missing people, the thought of not knowing where your family member is a heavy burden to carry, causing an indescribable amount of stress, anguish, and sadness that one cannot begin to understand unless going through it, including me. That is certainly the case here, and especially for his mother, who talked to George often, nearly every day. I have talked to both Mr. Cox and Ms. Calloway countless times over the past year and a half, and although I do believe they knew we were trying everything we could to find their son, I'm not sure I ever got off the phone with them thinking I did anything to ease their mind or obvious pain. That is and always will be the toughest part of my job. I will tell you this, Your Honor, one thing that I have learned over my many years of doing missing person investigations that end in homicide, there is one major difference between these cases and a homicide case with no missing person aspect.
With the homicide investigation, for lack of a better description, there was closure for the family from the onset. They unfortunately know their loved one is deceased and can start the healing process right away, so to speak. With the missing person investigation that concludes in homicide, that is not the case. These families endure an additional time frame of pain and suffering, in this case 7 months, with just not knowing where their loved one is and always holding out hope, as they should, that their family member is at least alive. That's an additional 7 months of stress, sadness, pain, anxiety that the criminal justice system often overlooks, in my opinion. As always, it just didn't need to be this way. It could have been avoided had Dy'mond Vaden had an ounce of human decency. With Dy'mond Vaden, Your Honor, don't be fooled. She is well-spoken, polite, intelligent, and presents herself well. What you are looking at, Your Honor, is a wolf in sheep's clothing. Over my 30 years, Dy'mond can lie and manipulate like no one I have ever encountered. She will look you in the eye, knowingly lie, and be very believable all the same. It's a terrible talent she certainly possesses. While conducting this investigation and learning how she communicates and interacts with people before and certainly after her arrest, Dy'mond will manipulate, use, deceive anybody, including family, to get what she wants. She is the master manipulator. She has no limitations on her manipulation or deception to get what she wants. In short, everything about Dy'mond Vaden is centered around Dy'mond Vaden. On my third and final conversation with Dy'mond, I told her, other than telling me her name, everything she has told me has been a lie. No statement in this investigation is more true. I can say with certainty that Dy'mond Vaden has zero remorse. She does not have any resemblance of her moral compass. Why she is like this, I cannot say. I can say that it is not because of the way she was raised. By all accounts, her parents are good people, hardworking, ethical, and most importantly, caring. From doing missing person investigations, I've learned many things. But one thing that I've learned without question, that there is a lot of kids that have terrible parents and still manage to be good, productive people despite their parents. However, and equally true, there are a lot of good parents that have terrible children to no fault of their own. That latter is certainly the case here. Dy'mond gets and deserves full credit for the person she is. This crime was horrific, Your Honor. The attempt of cleaning up the crime scene told the story of the type of person we were dealing with. The blood, Your Honor, was everywhere. Walls, floors, doors, just everywhere. Killing anyone for any reason takes a special kind of person. To knowingly, willingly, and consciously dispose of a human being in the manner that was done in this case, as they say in poker, that is going all in on the self-centered and malicious person you are. In closing, I want to thank the court for this opportunity, as well as to Prosecutor Strang and Prosecutor McNair, the county prosecutor's office in general, for their dedication and hard work in getting justice the Cox family and society deserve. I also want to thank the members of the Cleveland Police Homicide Unit, which are just about all here, as well as the supervisors, along with the Cleveland office of the FBI for their help and support in this investigation. Although I may be the face of this investigation, it certainly was not a one-man job. I have always and will respect the courts and their sentencing decisions in these cases, Your Honor. I respectfully request the court to impose the maximum sentence allowed, as I feel is more than warranted. Should that not be the court's decision, I do respectfully request the court to remember and consider those long 7 months the Cox family had to endure, waiting for their closure, and to add those 7 months to the end of the sentence. Thank you.
You listen, because that means this one got to him too. Now here is where this story goes, from painful to something that is genuinely hard to sit with. Because what happened inside that apartment on Bosworth Avenue did not happen all at once, and then end. It stretched out. It played out over time. And through the course of the investigation and the sentencing, enough of it came to the surface that we know how June spent the last moments of his life and who was in that room with him. June was stabbed. multiple times in the abdomen. And when the judge asked Dy'mond directly, in open court, how he died, she confirmed it herself. She said he was beaten and stabbed by her. But here's the part that does not let you go. After the stabbing, June was still alive. He was bleeding. He was moving through that apartment, falling, trying to get up, unable to stay on his feet.
You said to the court that it was a lot. You said that you were truly very sorry for what happened to George. What happened to George?
George died. So, like my lawyer told me, she didn't want me to make it about me, but I feel that it would be better if I was to...
How did he die? What happened?
He was beat up and he was stabbed.
By?
By me.
The blood that Luminol later found on those walls and floors and doors tells you exactly how long that went on and how far he moved while it was happening. He was conscious enough to speak. Conscious enough to make a request. He asked her to save him. Not fighting, not threatening. He told her to save him. And what did she do? She picked up her phone and she ran a Google search. The search read, "What are the chances to survive in real life if you get stabbed in the abdomen multiple times?" Oh, so now, you are Googling survival rates while this man is bleeding out on the floor in front of you. A man who is asking you to save him. A man whose daughter calls him dad. And you are on Google. The judge asked her about that search directly. He asked her if June was alive after she had stabbed him, if he was bleeding out while she sat there. He asked why she did not call 911. She said she panicked.
Did you do this Google search? Asking if somebody was stabbed in the abdomen, how long it would take them to survive? Was he alive after you had stabbed him in the abdomen? And he was bleeding out? So you had an opportunity to call 911 on his behalf. The detective said that there's blood all over the house. Did he go to different areas of the house while he was bleeding? Was he unable to get to the phone? And why was that?
He was kind of just like in shock, I guess. He kept falling and I was basically trying to stop him from moving so I could help him.
Did he want to leave the house?
No.
Did he ask you to call for help?
He just told me to save him, try to save him.
And why didn't you?
Save him?
He's asking, he's bleeding out, there's blood all over the house. This has taken a long period of time. You've Google searched, how long does it take someone to die after being stabbed in the abdomen multiple times?
Just panic. I panicked.
She said she did everything she could to try to save him. But hey, the phone already told a different story. She did not call 911. She did not call anyone for help. She watched him bleed. She watched him fall. She ran that search, and then, at some point, she left. She said when she left the apartment, she reached out to people she knew and basically told them she could not be there, that there was a situation she needed handled. Those people came to the apartment, and what they did next is the part that June's family had to live with for 7 full months. June's body was hogtied, wrapped in a bedsheet pulled from the apartment. Then he was put in a vehicle, driven an hour and 15 minutes away, and thrown into the Huron River.
How did you move him?
I left the scene and people that I knew. They
This is your statement, it's your allocution. People you knew what?
People I knew, they came over to the house and I just basically just told them that I couldn't be there, so they got rid of him. And they threatened me to not to say anything to the police, or they was gonna basically confine me and my family.
But these are people that you were close enough to,
I really
that-
wasn't close to them.
people you felt you could trust to do that job for you, yes?
Basically.
Your Honor, we've shared that information with the state of Ohio.
Well, that's good. I don't have any facts. You didn't ask for a pre-sentence investigation report. I advised you, if you were going to do this without a pre-sentence investigation report, that I would have questions at the time of sentencing. And these are logical questions that I think the court should be apprised of. I'd be happy to continue this matter and get a full pre-sentence investigation. And if you wish, you can provide that information to the court even right now, if you have it in documentary form.
I've already shared it with the state of Ohio.
I'm saying me. If you wish to share it, you may. But clearly this is a sentencing where the court is trying to obtain information. And it doesn't have available to it. So, Ms. Vaden, these people that helped you, who are they?
Just people that I know around that community. William Rogers and Donald Humphrey.
So a sheet from your residence was used?
Pardon?
A sheet from your residence was used, yes?
Well, it wasn't my residence, it was George's residence.
And where did that come from?
His home.
Off of the bed?
On the floor. Yeah, on the floor.
It was on the floor?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then where did the rope come from?
Well, like I said, I left the scene, so I don't know. I just kind of just left the scene and they went to the apartment.
But you knew they were going to use the sheet?
I didn't know what they were going to do. I just knew that I had a mess and I panicked and left.
And then you cleaned up afterwards?
No, I didn't clean. I never went back.
That is not a crime of panic. That level of disposal, the tying, the wrapping, the distance, the water, that is a decision. A calculated one made step by people who were more concerned with not getting caught than with the fact that a man had just lost his life. The bedsheet they used came from the apartment. The rope they used was Marine-style rope. He was found tied at the ankles. And he was left in that river, like he was nothing. George Sr. said it in court, and I want you to hear it the way he said it, because he said it with Dy'mond sitting right there in that room. Knowing that he had been hogtied, wrapped in a sheet, drove an hour and 15 minutes away, and thrown in the water like he was just garbage and trash.
My son was floating in the river somewhere with his body just decomposing, knowing that he had been hogtied, wrapped in a sheet, drove an hour and 15 minutes away, and thrown in the water like he was just garbage and trash. And just to concur with Candy said, he wasn't trash. He was a son. He was a father. He was a nephew. He was a brother. He was a friend. He was a lot of things. May not have been perfect, but who is? But he definitely didn't deserve to die like that.
And just to concur what I can't say, he wasn't trash. He was a son. He was a father. He was a nephew. He was a brother. He was a friend. Period. That man stood in that courtroom and made sure the record reflected exactly who his son was. Not a case number, not a John Doe. His son, for 7 months, June was just gone. Detective Kevin Callahan picked up this case when the missing persons report was formally filed in early November. And from that point forward, he was in it. He was on the phone with June's parents, George Sr. and Sonia Calloway, more times than he could count. He said something at the sentencing that has stayed with me. He said he did not think he ever got off one of those calls feeling like he had done anything to ease their pain, that he had given them any relief at all. And that, he said, was always the hardest part of his job. He had other cases like this one over 30 years. He had seen missing persons investigations turn into homicides before. But this case made him do something he had never done in 30 years, walk into a sentencing hearing and speak. That was a first. And he did not do it lightly. Now, back to what law enforcement was working with on the ground. They had a blood-soaked apartment with no body. They had a woman who claimed she had never even been in that apartment, a claim that fell apart when George's boots turned up at her place. They had a recorded phone call that showed her getting angry and shutting down every time June's brother pushed for answers. They had a man who had simply vanished. And they had a family that was calling every day, hoping for news that did not come. Anyways, the break that cracked this case open did not come from a tip or a confession. It came from two people out on the water. On May 16th, 2025, 7 months after June was last seen alive, two kayakers near the Huron River marsh, just south of the Route 2 bridge in Erie County, found something. A body in the water. At that point, nobody knew who it was. The news covered it as an unidentified man in Erie County. The description they had: a black male, approximately 5 feet 6, around 160 pounds, dark facial hair, estimated to be somewhere between his 20s and mid-30s, found in a fitted bedsheet, tied at the ankles with marine-style rope. The manner of discovery alone told investigators this was not an accident. The Erie County Sheriff's Office asked the public to help identify him using his tattoos. They studied those tattoos and tried to work out which community or organizations the man might have been connected to, hoping someone would recognize something. They put out the description. They waited. Think about what that means for a second. That June was in that river for so long that the only way to identify him was through his tattoos, because the condition of his body made everything else impossible. 7 months in that water. And his family was still out there looking for him, not knowing he was already gone. The bedsheet found with the body was matched to the one from the Bosworth Avenue apartment. DNA testing confirmed the identification. It was George Cox Jr. Once that confirmation came through, George Sr. went to see his son. And what he found there, the condition June was in after 7 months in that water, meant a traditional burial was not possible. The family chose cremation. And then came the moment that George Sr. described in court. His granddaughter, Gianna, 8 years old, asked him why they had burned her daddy up, why they had to do it that way. And he had to find the words to explain it to a child who had already lost so much.
Of my life, we had to cremate him because I couldn't put him in the ground looking like that. I couldn't. His daughter asked me, Granddad, why did you burn my dad up? And I'm gonna have to explain that to her one day. I mean, it's been hard on this family. And I'm the head, I'm the leader, so everybody been looking at me for answers. People wanted me to do things that would have probably had me standing here, but I wasn't gonna do that. I trusted the system. And I'm going to trust that you do the right thing here with what you do.
He said in court that he was going to have to explain it to her one day.
Trust that you do that.
That he was still carrying that. That little girl deserved better. June deserved better. This whole family deserved better. But hey, here is something else that came out. On that same day, the identification was confirmed. May 16th, the same day the family got the news that the body in the river was June, Dy'mond sent a text message to Emmanuel McQueen during what appears to have been an argument between them. The message read, "You going to be missing next?" Oh, so now, on the very day June is identified, that is the energy. Prosecutors brought that message up at sentencing. The defense pushed back and argued that one line pulled from a larger conversation is not enough to understand what it was actually about. The judge acknowledged that and moved on. But the prosecutor's point was not really about the legal weight of one text. It was about the kind of person they were asking the judge to consider when deciding on a sentence. And on that front, the text did its job. Let me tell you something. Dy'mond was arrested on July 21st, 2025, at Emmanuel McQueen's home. The same man investigators had already connected to the disposal of June's body. The same man the judge later confirmed on the record had helped get rid of George Cox Jr. McQueen had already caught a weapons charge at the time of that arrest, but his role in this went further than that, and the judge made that clear from the bench. There were other names that came up too, William Rogers and Donald Humphrey, but their full involvement was not completely established on the record at sentencing. The judge actually noted that the court was working with limited information because no pre-sentence investigation report had been prepared. So that part of the story still has gaps that the public record alone cannot fully close. What the record does show is this: at least 3 people, beyond Dy'mond, knew what happened to June or were involved in what came after. And for 7 months, every single one of them let that family search. George Sr. crossing that river 26 times. Sonia Calloway calling her son's phone. Gianna, somewhere, waiting for her dad to come back. And June, in that river, the whole time. Dy'mond Vaden was arrested on July 21st, 2025, at Emmanuel McQueen's home. 9 months after June was last seen alive. 9 months of his family not knowing, searching, grieving without being able to grieve, and she was at her other man's house. The original charge was murder. Through the plea agreement process, that charge was reduced to involuntary manslaughter, a first-degree felony under Ohio law. She also faced a felonious assault charge and a separate charge connected to how June's body was handled after his death. The agreed sentencing range between the state and the defense going into that hearing was 14 to 20 years on the minimum end, before any additional time that Ohio law allows for. Now, I know some people are going to have feelings about that reduction from murder to involuntary manslaughter, and honestly, those feelings are valid. But here is the legal reality that even George Sr. acknowledged in that courtroom. The medical examiner who performed the autopsy listed the cause and manner of death as undetermined. The condition June was found in after 7 months in that river made a formal determination impossible. The examiner could note that the circumstances pointed to a violent, non-natural death, and the investigation supported that, but without a clean forensic ruling, the prosecution had to work with what the evidence could actually prove in court. That is the gap between what we know happened and what the law could establish on the record. That is not justice failing. That is what happens when you put someone in a river for 7 months. Moving on to that courtroom, before the judge made his decision, 4 members of June's family addressed the court: his mother, Sonia Calloway, his aunts, Lynette Ford and Chaplain Candace Amos, and his father, George Cox Sr. Each one of them walked up to that microphone and made sure that Judge understood exactly who had been lost and exactly what this family had carried. Then it was Dy'mond's attorney's turn. Deanna Robertson spoke first for the defense. She acknowledged the family's pain. She told the judge her client had accepted responsibility. She described Dy'mond as someone who got into a terrible situation and then made one bad decision after another trying to get out of it. She reminded the judge that Dy'mond's family was present in that courtroom. Good people, she said, who had not enabled any of what happened and who did not condone it. Look, the defense attorney was doing her job. That is what defense attorneys do.
Your Honor, I'd like to address first of all, the last comment made by Attorney Strain. When he initially brought up that text message, you asked him, you said, do you know when that text message was sent, if the defendant knew what was going on, et cetera, et cetera? I think it's misrepresentative to stand here and say that one line of a text message without knowing all the surrounding text messages or what was going on, what the conversation was about, to just attribute that one line to be related or somehow indicative of how she felt about this incident. And I'm going to ask the court not to give that much consideration because, as the court inquired, the state of Ohio cannot say what was being in reference to. They can't say about the conversation, and it's really, it can be misleading. Your Honor, my client, I just want to say that we don't, first of all, we extend our sincere apology to the family. Words don't help, apologies don't help, but I just want to say that it is never, ever a good thing to see a life, anybody, young, old, or in between, being taken. And from the defense point, I do extend my sincere apology. I want to say that all of us have many different sides, and we all relate to our families different, and we all relate to our relationships different. And I thought Mr. Cox Sr. Said it well, that none of us are perfect people, and that no one, no human being should be thrown away like trash. And I can stand here, I can speak for my client, but she will speak for herself. The biggest remorse she has was the decision she made after the incident. And you know, sometimes people refer to this as being a Monday morning quarterback, or a lot of times people will look at a situation and say, if that was me, this is what I would have done. But none of us know what we would actually do if we're in a situation of this kind or that kind. And I would like to say that if there was an encounter with me and anyone, and someone ended up dead, that I would call 911, that maybe I would leave and call the police and try to get somebody there, or maybe I would try to render help. But for me to stand here in this court and say that I would definitely do X, Y, and Z would just be dishonest, because none of us know how we will react in a really stressful and difficult and horrifying situation. And how you react, it really depends on how you handle difficult things. And Your Honor, I just want to say that, again, this is a horrible situation. My client has accepted responsibility in this situation, and she too is a human being. And she's not a monster. I know the detective, Callahan, he made his remarks because all of his interactions with my client was revolving around this situation. But he didn't know her as a person. He doesn't know how she is with her family. He doesn't know how she reacts under stress. And so, I mean, he can say what he perceived under a situation. But when he's questioning her, she's fighting for her life. She's trying to deal with someone who is a seasoned investigator, and she's terrified, and she's afraid. And for people to sit and say, I wouldn't lie if I was afraid, or I wouldn't mislead somebody if I was terrified, it's just not true. Many times you'll find somebody in a difficult situation, and then what they do is every decision they make after that makes that situation worse. And that's what we have here. We don't have a monster. We have someone that was in a horrible situation. The situation got bad when Mr. Cox passed away, and then every single decision that was made after that was a bad decision. But those bad decisions does not erase the human being that was before this whole entire tragedy occurred. And I'm asking the court to consider that, and to consider that many times you have really good people. We have doctors, we have lawyers, we have judges who are amazing people in public and not so amazing people in private and in their relationships. And I'm asking the court to consider that. Thank you. And one other thing, Your Honor.
Yes.
I would like to say that while Ms. Vaden's family is not going to speak, she does have, and I appreciate the detective, he did say that, he's interacted with her family. She has a loving family. She has a strong family. She does not have an enabling family. She does not have a family that thinks everything she does is okay and that would ever condone any decisions she made in this situation. Thank you, Your Honor.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You can disagree with the argument and still acknowledge that it was made.
Two families are here today.
The judge heard it. Then Dy'mond spoke for herself.
What I do want to say is there have been situations that I've been in that I have walked away from due to violence. I wasn't raised that way. I wasn't raised in a household with a guy putting their hands on a woman. So there was a lot of times where I had to walk away from a situation other than being left from a situation. So I do regret, and I do think about it every day, that I wasn't able to help him, that I wasn't able to call the police because I panicked. I walked away from a situation that was very, 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 it was just a lot. It was a lot for me to deal with, and I truly am very, very sorry for what happened to George. Me and George had an up and down relationship. It was good, it was bad, it was not always perfect, but I am a person that is a loving and caring person. And one thing about me, I'm not a person that's going to hurt you for no reason, or I'm not a type of person that's just going to just bully you or just put you in harm's way.
She told the court she had been in violent situations before and had chosen to walk away from them. She said she was not raised in a home where a man put his hands on a woman. She said she regretted not being able to help June, not being able to call the police, and that she thought about it every day. She said she panicked. She said she was truly very sorry. And then, and this is the part that mattered, the judge started asking his own questions. He asked her about calling George Sr. Dad. He asked her how many times she had told members of June's family that she did not know what happened to him. She said twice. He asked what she had said to them. She said she told them she did not know. He asked her what happened to George. She said George died. He pushed. He asked how. She said he was beaten and stabbed. By her. He asked about the Google search. She confirmed it. He asked whether June was still alive after the stabbing, whether he was bleeding out, whether he had the ability to get to a phone on his own. She said he kept falling. She said he was in shock. She said she was trying to stop him from moving so she could help him. The judge asked her directly, "Did he ask you to call for help?" She said, "He just told me to save him." "Try to save him." "Girl." He told her to save him. And she ran a Google search. The judge then asked why she did not save him. She said she panicked. She kept saying she panicked. And then she said she did everything she could to try to save him, but that she just did not call the police. The judge's response cut right through it. He said, "You would rather have seen him die than get help." He was not asking, he was stating. Then he asked how she moved the body. She said she left and called people she knew. She said they came to the apartment and handled it, and then threatened her into silence, saying if she told the police, they would harm her and her family. She named names, William Rogers and Donald Humphrey, in addition to Emmanuel McQueen. The judge noted, on the record, that he did not have a pre-sentence investigation report and that the court was working with limited information. He said he would have been willing to continue the matter to get one. But they moved forward. Now, Detective Callahan had made a specific request to that judge before he delivered his sentence. He said if the maximum was not the court's decision, to at least remember the 7 months that family spent without answers, and add that time into the sentence. The judge sentenced Dy'mond Vaden to the maximum the agreement allowed, 11 years on the involuntary manslaughter charge, the maximum on that count, 8 additional years on the felonious assault charge, 7 more months on the charge connected to the disposal of June's body. All 3 sentences running back to back, not at the same time, consecutive. The minimum she will serve before any review is 19 years and 7 months.
At the time of the plea, it was agreed that the offenses that the defendant pled guilty to would be non-allied offenses of similar import, and that there was an agreed recommended sentence of 14 to 20 years with no early release. That period of time being on the, I should say, not including the Reagan-Tokes indefinite period, or in other words, the maximum sentence. The court will follow the party's recommendation and sentence within the range. As such, there will be a consecutive sentence, and the court has reviewed each of these crimes that have been committed here. And the court will note that it is employing consecutive sentences consistent with the parties' agreement, and also pursuant to 2929.104C4B, the court imposes prison terms consecutively, finding that the consecutive service is necessary to protect the public from future crime or to punish the defendant, that the consecutive sentences are not disproportionate to the seriousness of the defendant's conduct and to the danger defendant poses to the public, and that at least 2 of the multiple offenses were committed in this case as part of 1 or more courses of conduct, and the harm caused by said multiple offenses was so great or unusual that no single prison term for any of the offenses committed as part of any of the courses of conduct adequately reflects the seriousness of the defendant's conduct. The court also imposes consecutive sentences pursuant to 2929.14C4C, finding that consecutive sentence service is necessary to protect the public from future crime or to punish the defendant, that the consecutive sentences are not disproportionate to the seriousness of the defendant's conduct and to the danger defendant poses to the public, and that defendant's history of criminal conduct demonstrates that consecutive sentences are necessary to protect the public from future crime by the defendant.
Ohio's Reagan-Tokes law adds an indefinite period of up to 5.5 additional years on top of that minimum, depending on how she conducts herself during incarceration. That means the maximum she could serve is 25 years and 2 months. The Department of Rehabilitation and Correction will assess her over time, and that assessment determines where she lands between the floor and the ceiling. She received credit for the 234 days she had already served. Court costs and fees were waived. Dy'mond said in her statement that she was not safe in that relationship, that she had not been stable. Those were her words, in open court. No documentation, no prior reports, no corroborating evidence supporting those claims was introduced into the court record. The judge heard what she said. He sentenced her to the maximum anyway. I said what I said. George Cox Jr. was 32 years old. He had a daughter named Gianna, who was 8 years old when she lost him, and who will grow up with a grandfather who has to one day explain to her why they had to cremate her father, who has to find the right words for something that should never have needed words at all. He had a father who refused to stop. 26 drives. Michigan to Cleveland. Cleveland to Michigan. Crossing the same river each time, not knowing. George Sr. said it himself in that courtroom. Every time he passes the Huron River now, he thinks about his son. That road will never be just a road again. He had a mother who talked to him nearly every single day. And then one day, the calls just stopped. And she had to carry 7 months of not knowing before she got the answer no mother ever wants. He had a community of people who knew him as June, the Pancake King, the father who showed up, the son who called to ask if he was handling things right. And he deserved so much more than the way this ended. There is something Detective Callahan said at that sentencing that I keep coming back to. He said that in missing persons cases that turn into homicides, families carry an extra weight that the criminal justice system often does not account for. That extra stretch of time, the not knowing, the hoping, the waiting, is its own punishment, layered on top of the grief. 7 months in this case. 7 months of a family holding on while the answer was already in that river. That is what it costs when someone chooses silence over a phone call. Anyways, if you are in a relationship right now that has you walking on eggshells, that has you afraid of what happens when you try to leave, that has you feeling like you are not safe, please reach out. Tell someone. Tell anyone. Because June's story is a reminder that these situations can escalate to places that nobody comes back from. And there are people who want to help you before it ever gets there. To the Cox family, George Sr., Sonia, Gianna, Jamari, Chaplain Candace Amos, and everyone who loved June, this channel sees you. This story was told for you and for him. Rest easy, June, the Pancake King, the present father, the son who always called. You were not trash. You were never trash. You were loved,